Commander Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Kepler Station and watched the stars shimmer through the viewing ports like diamonds scattered across black velvet. 20 years had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Concordat, and those 2 decades had changed everything for Earth and its people. Station hummed with life around her as 2 million human souls went about their daily routines in this massive orbital city that orbited the gas giant Kepler 4 to be Sarah had commanded the defense garrison here for 3 years, and she had grown to love this place with its markets full of alien goods and its diplomatic halls where humans mingled with 17 different species from across the galaxy. The Concordat had seemed like a dream when Earth first made contact with them through their probe network. A coalition of ancient civilizations that had maintained peace for 3,000 years welcomed humanity with open arms or tentacles or crystalline appendages depending on the species, but Sarah had always sensed something beneath the surface, like a current of cold water running under warm. The 3 most powerful species in the Concordat treated humans differently than they treated each other. The Vrakesh, with their chitinous exoskeletons and hive minds, looked at humans the way someone might look at a clever pet. The Luminor, who existed as crystalline matrices of living light, spoke to humans in the tones reserved for children. The Tethians, with their amphibious bodies and water-filled environment suits, regarded humanity with barely concealed amusement. Sarah had reported these observations to Earth Command, but the politicians back home were too excited about alien technology and new trade routes to worry about hurt feelings. Then 3 months ago, everything changed when a human exploration team discovered something on a dead world at the edge of Concordat space, ancient technology left behind by the progenitors who had vanished from the galaxy millions of years before any current species had evolved. The artifacts could revolutionize faster than light travel and make energy production nearly free for any civilization that possessed them. Earth claimed the find under the salvage rights that the Concordat itself had established centuries ago. The 3 major powers demanded humanity hand over the technology for the good of all species. When Earth refused, citing sovereign rights and legal precedent, the temperature in the galaxy dropped 20 degrees. Threats came disguised as diplomatic warnings. Trade sanctions appeared overnight. Then yesterday the message arrived requesting a peace conference here at Kepler Station to resolve the dispute diplomatically. Sarah had argued against it. In every communication with Earth Command, her gut screamed that this was a trap, but the diplomats overruled her military concerns. They wanted to believe in the Concordat's good faith and in the power of negotiation. Now, as she watched 3 massive fleets drop out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, her gut had been proven right. The Vrakesh bioships looked like enormous insects sculpted from chitin and living metal. The Luminor vessels glowed with internal light, their crystalline hulls refracting starlight into rainbow patterns. The Tethian warships were sleek and predatory, designed to move through both space and water with equal grace. Sarah's tactical display lit up with 50 capital ships and hundreds of smaller craft, all converging on Kepler Station. Her own garrison consisted of 12 patrol corvettes and 3 light frigates. The numbers made her stomach twist into knots. All hands to battle stations. She broadcast across the station-wide network while trying to keep her voice calm. This is not a drill, and all civilians need to proceed immediately to the emergency shelters. She opened a channel to the approaching fleets. This is Commander Sarah Chen of Kepler Station, and you are approaching in violation of peaceful assembly protocols. The response came from Hive Queen Jothik herself, whose voice buzzed with harmonics from 1,000 throats speaking as one. Commander Chen, your species has refused the Concordat's reasonable request, and you have chosen to hoard technology that belongs to all civilized peoples, and the Concordat has voted to take necessary action. Sarah's blood ran cold. There are 2 million civilians on this station, and they have nothing to do with Earth's decision. Luminar voice chimed in like bells made of ice. They are human, and that makes them complicit in your species' greed. The Tethian admiral added his gurgling tones. Surrender the station, and we will be merciful. Sarah knew what their mercy looked like, and she had studied enough history, both human and alien, to recognize a purge. When she saw one coming, all ships engaged, she ordered her tiny fleet By the civilians' time to reach the shelters and transmit everything to Earth, command her, corvettes and frigates burned hard away from the station, trying to draw the enemy fleet's fire for a few precious minutes. It worked as the Concordat ships focused on eliminating the military threat, but Sarah had always known this was a delaying tactic and not a winning strategy. The alien weapons tore through her ships with contemptuous ease. The corvette Destiny exploded in a ball of plasma that briefly outshone the local star there. Frigate Determination lasted longer, using its point defense to knock down incoming missiles, but eventually a Rakesh bioweapon ate through its hull like acid through paper. Sarah watched her people die and felt each loss like a physical blow. When only her flagship remained, she ordered all non-essential crew to evacuate in the life pods. Get to the planet below, she told them. Hide in the atmosphere, and maybe some of you will survive to tell. Earth, what happened here then? The Concordat fleet turned its full attention to Kepler Station itself. First missiles hit the residential sectors, and Sarah watched entire neighborhoods vanish in fire. She opened a final transmission to Earth, knowing she had only seconds before the command center took a direct hit. This is Commander Sarah Chen at Kepler Station, and they have betrayed us. Another impact rocked the station, throwing her against her command chair. All of them, and the Concordat has shown its true face. The lights flickered as power systems began to fail throughout the massive structure. 2 million people lived here, and 2 million people are dying here, and I need Earth to know this was not an accident or a misunderstanding. The tactical display showed reactor breaches cascading through the station's power core. This was murder, and this was the Concordat teaching humanity its place. She could hear the screaming now through the comm channels as fire and vacuum claimed the civilians who had not made it to shelters in time. Make them remember, Sarah said, as the final missile struck the command center. The last thing Commander Sarah Chen saw was white light. Kepler Station broke apart in an explosion that lit up the entire system as 2 million human souls became vapor and debris. The Concordat fleets withdrew. Satisfied that the lesson had been taught, they divided humanity's 12 outer colonies among themselves. Like victors dividing spoils, the Rakesh took the mining worlds. The Luminar claimed the research stations. The Tethians seized the water-rich planets. Then they sent their ultimatum to Earth, demanding immediate surrender and transfer of the progenitor technology they expected Earth to bow its head and accept the new reality. They expected humanity to know its place. They were about to learn that humanity had spent 10,000 years perfecting one particular skill war. 3 months had passed since Kepler Station burned, and the galaxy had grown very quiet. The Queen Jothic stood in her throne chamber on the primary Rakesh world and reviewed the latest intelligence reports about human activity, or rather the complete lack of human activity. The reports contained nothing but blank spaces and unanswered questions. Every Concordat spy embedded in human space had gone silent, not through death, but through simple disappearance. One day, they were transmitting regular updates, and the next day nothing. Listening posts positioned near Earth's solar system showed only static probe networks that had monitored human colony worlds for 20 years. Suddenly detected no signals at all. The silence was absolute and complete. They are broken, Jothic said to her council of subkeens, who surrounded her in a semicircle of chitinous bodies. They mourn their dead, and they know they cannot stand against the combined might of the Concordat. But even as she spoke those words, a small doubt gnawed at the back of her hive mind. The Luminar consensus gathered in their crystal halls and performed calculations using quantum matrices that could predict probable futures with 90% accuracy. Their best computational nodes analyzed Earth's industrial capacity and military assets. The humans possess 473 military vessels, announced Crystal Mine Threshold, who spoke for the consensus. Their largest ship's mass, only 2 million tons, and their weapons technology lags behind Concordat standards by at least a century. Even if they converted their entire industrial base to military production, they could not build enough ships to challenge even one of our 3 species before. We conquered their homeworld. The other Luminar chimed their agreement in harmonic frequencies. Yet, Threshold noticed a small anomaly in the calculation's I probability spike that suggested outcomes beyond their models, but anomalies were common in chaotic systems, so Threshold dismissed it as computational noise. The Tethian Sphere admirals swam in their command pools on the ocean world of Tethys Prime and planned the invasion of Sol System Admiral. Kragan reviewed holographic displays that floated in the water, showing Earth's defensive positions. Their orbital platforms are primitive, he gurgled to his subordinates. Their fleet is scattered among their colonies, and their ground forces have never fought an enemy with our technological advantages. We will occupy Earth within 6 weeks of beginning operations, and the humans will surrender their progenitor artifacts or watch their cities burn. The other admirals clicked their mandibles in approval, but Kragan kept returning to one troubling detail: the silence in his experienced species that were defeated either begged for mercy or raged against their fate. Humans did neither. They simply went quiet, meanwhile, far from the Concordat's watchful eyes. Humanity had undergone a transformation. Every shipyard in Sol System ran at maximum capacity 24 hours a day. Luna's industrial complexes, which had built civilian transports for 2 decades, now assembled weapons of war. The asteroid belt became one vast factory complex as mining ships carved up planetoids for raw materials. Mars converted every surface facility to military production of an Earth itself transformed as peacetime factories, retooled to build armor-plating missile systems and fusion reactors. Zhao stood in the command center of the Olympus Mons military complex on Mars and watched the production numbers scroll across his displays. 5,000 warships, not the elegant vessels that the Concordat built with their graceful curves and their aesthetic sensibilities. These were human warships, brutal and functional, designed with only one purpose: to kill. The engineers had dug through every military archive from Earth's bloody history, found the designs that previous generations had deemed too aggressive, too violent, too brutal for civilized space battle carriers, the size of small moons bristling with launch bays for fighter craft and missile pods, dreadnoughts armored like medieval knights, carrying railguns that could punch through a planet's stealth, corvettes painted with materials that absorbed every wavelength of radiation, making them invisible until they fired on weapons that made the engineers themselves hesitate before building them. Kinetic kill missiles that would accelerate to 30% of light speed before impact, fusion warheads wrapped in stealth plating, autonomous AI-controlled hunter-killer drones that the Concordat had banned under their warfare conventions, relativistic projectiles that were just tungsten rods but moving fast enough to crack countenance. Admiral Zhao had argued against some of these weapons initially, had been trained in the Concordat's rules of warfare during humanity's integration period, limited conflicts with honor codes and restrictions on civilian targeting and proportional response doctrines. Then he watched the footage from Kepler Station. He watched 2 million people die. He watched children burn. He watched the Concordat fleets withdraw without even checking for survivors. Now he signed off on every weapon system without hesitation. The Concordat had taught humanity a valuable lesson. The rules only applied if both sides followed the command. The Concordat had torn up the rulebook when they fired the first shot. "Sir, the fleet is ready," reported Captain Williams, who served as Zhao's chief of staff. Looked at the tactical display showing 5,000 warships assembled in formation near Jupiter, the largest fleet humanity had ever built. Smaller than what the Concordat could field if they combined their forces, but Zhao was not planning to fight the kind of war the Concordat expected. Open a channel to all ship commanders. He ordered. 5,000 faces appeared on his screens, men and women from every nation on Earth, in every colony in human space. Young officers, fresh from accelerated training academies, grizzled veterans who remembered the bad old days before the Concordat, all of them united by one thing: they had all lost someone at Kepler Station. "The Concordat thinks they know us," Zhao began. "They think we are a young species that got lucky and found some advanced technology. They think we will fold when faced with superior numbers and superior firepower. They think we fight like they do, with honor codes and limited objectives and proportional responses. They are wrong." Zhao let that word hang in the silence. "Humanity has been fighting wars since before we climbed down from the trees, and we have learned lessons that the Concordat forgot. During their 3,000 years of comfortable peace, we do not fight for honor because honor does not protect our families. We do not fight for glory because glory does not bring back our dead. We fight to win, and we fight to make sure our enemies never threaten us again. The Concordat wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy. And we are going to teach them why you never back a human into a corner. We are going to teach them that the rules of war were written by people who had never fought humanity, and we are going to teach them why. Earth's history is soaked in blood. It's not because we are monsters, but because when someone threatens our survival, we become very, very good at making them. Stop Shao stood up from his command. Chair all ships, prepare for jump to faster than light and weapons free on all targets. No prisoners unless they surrender unconditionally. No mercy unless they beg for it. And no stopping until every species that fired on Kepler Station understands exactly what they unleashed. 5,000 ships acknowledged the order. Their hulls were painted matte black to absorb sensor sweeps there. Weapons were loaded and armed. Their crews were ready. The Concordat had spent 3 months waiting for Earth to surrender. Instead, they were about to receive a lesson in human warfare. Al gave the order, all ships jump. 5,000 warships vanished into faster-than-light space. Concordat's monitoring stations detected nothing. The silence continued, but soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn to fear that silence, because it was not the silence of defeat. It was the silence before the storm. The Cathara system had been home to the Verkesh species for over 10,000 years. 3 planets orbited the orange star, and each planet housed billions of Verkesh, organized into massive hive structures that reached kilometers into the Sky Hive Queen. Shothik ruled from the largest structure on Cathara, Prime, and today she was receiving reports about increased Concordat fleet movements. The reports were routine and boring. Then the alarms started screaming. 5,000 human warships dropped out. A faster-than-light space at the edge of the Cathara system. They appeared without warning because human stealth technology had advanced considerably in 3 months of total war preparation. The Verkesh defense fleet scrambled from their orbital stations. 2,000 bioships launched into space as their living holes. Crippled with activation, the Verkesh had bred these ships over centuries, combining biological engineering with mechanical systems to create vessels that could repair themselves. And think, with hive mind coordination, they had never lost a major fleet engagement. They swarmed toward the human fleet with the confidence of predators attacking prey. Morel Shao watched from his flagship Retribution as the enemy ships approached. They are forming attack pattern, Omega-7, reported his tactical officer. It looks like they plan to envelop us and strike from multiple vectors simultaneously, Zhao noted. Concordat fought their wars like chess matches with elegant tactics and predictable strategies. Humanity had studied those tactics during their integration period. Now they were going to exploit every weakness they had found. All ships execute scatter pattern Delta, Shao ordered. Missile batteries fire full spread, and then retreat. To range maximum, the human fleet did not engage in an honorable, face-to-face battle. Instead, thousand missiles streaked across space toward the Verkesh fleet. Then the human ships turned and burned away at maximum acceleration. The Verkesh fleet's hive mind calculated the attack and determined that their point defense systems could handle the incoming missiles. What they did not calculate was that half the missiles were decoys and the other half contained human-designed AI warfare packages that had been specifically programmed to exploit Verkesh hive mind communication protocols. Missiles hit, and suddenly 200 Vrkish bioships started receiving false commands from their own hive network. They turned on their sister ships and opened. Fire chaos erupted in the Vrkesh formation as ship fired on ship, while the hive queens on the planets below screamed orders that only made the confusion worthwhile. The Vrkesh fleet tore itself apart. The human ships looped around and struck from a completely different vector. This time they used railguns, tungsten rods moving at relativistic speeds, punched through bioship hulls like bullets through wet paper. Vrkesh tried to adapt, but human warfare did not give the enemy time to adapt. Shoes. Fleet split into 100 smaller groups. Each group struck a different target. Shipyards fell to missile strikes. Orbital platforms exploded under railgun fire. Communication satellites vanished in clouds of expanding debris. And then the human fleet did something that made the Concordat species watching from their distant monitoring posts freeze in horror. They targeted the planets themselves, not with weapons of mass destruction, but with kinetic impact. There are small asteroids wrapped in engine nest, aimed at military targets with precision that left civilian areas mostly intact. The first impactor hit a Vrkesh military complex on Kithara, prime with the force of a nuclear weapon. The shockwave flattened everything within 100 kilometers. The second impactor struck an ammunition depot. Resulting explosion created a mushroom cloud visible from orbit. The third, fourth, and fifth impactors eliminated the planets. 3 largest starship production facility, Shiv Queen Jathik, watched her world burn from her throne chamber. Contact the humans, she ordered. Offer them negotiations. The response came within minutes on all Vrkesh frequencies. Admiral Zhao's face appeared on every screen. You negotiated at Kepler Station, he said in a voice like ice. 2 million voices answered your negotiations, and can you hear them? Hive Queen, can you hear them screaming? Because I can. The transmission cut off. The human fleet continued its assault. Tothik tried to rally her military forces, but the humans were everywhere and nowhere. They did not fight like civilized species. Valued honor and individual glory. They fought like a virus infecting one system and then spreading to the next, using tactics that the Concordat considered dishonorable, false surrender signals that lured Vrkesh ships into ambush, electronic warfare that turned defense networks against their operators, kamikaze drones that accepted certain destruction to eliminate high-value targets, and worst of all, they showed no mercy to military targets. A Vrkesh fleet commander tried to surrender his damaged ship. Human response was a railgun round through his bridge. No. Quarter 4. Kepler Station became the human fleet's unofficial motto. Within 18 hours, 3 Vrkesh hive worlds were burning, not destroyed, not sterilized, but burning with carefully calculated strikes that eliminated military capacity while leaving the civilian population mostly alive. Live to remember, live to tell other species what happened when you murdered 2 million humans. Luminar Consensus watched the destruction of the Vrkesh worlds and immediately mobilized their crystal armadas. Tethians recalled their occupation fleets from human colonies. Every Concordat species began preparing for war, but humanity was not finished teaching its first lesson on the 4th day of the assault. Admiral Zhao broadcast a message across all Concordat frequencies. The Vrkesh fired the first shots at Kepler Station. He announced they had paid for those shots with 3 of their hive worlds. The Luminar voted to support the attack. The Tethians supplied ships and weapons. 14 other Concordat species voted in favor of sanctions against humanity or remained silent when we were betrayed. We have not forgotten any of you. Zhao's face filled screens across the galaxy. The Concordat believed that 3,000 years of peace had civilized the galaxy, but peace did not make you civilized. It made you soft. You forgot what real war looks like. Forgot that some species do not stop when they gain an advantage. Forgot that humans have been fighting each other for 10,000 years, and we learned lessons you never had to learn. Now, class is in session. The transmission ended. The Vrkesh hive queens broadcast desperate pleas for a ceasefire. Zhao ignored them. The Luminar Consensus sent diplomatic envoys. Zhao had them turned away. The Tethians offered to withdraw from occupied human colonies. Zhao laughed and sent the human fleet to its next target, because the second lesson of human warfare was simple. Humans do not fight on one front. While the main fleet devastated, the Vrakish World's smaller human task forces had been moving into position throughout the galaxy, strike groups of 50 to 100 ships each, one targeting a different Concordat species each, one carrying weapons designed specifically to exploit that species' weaknesses. The Luminar learned that their beautiful crystal ships, shattered like glass under sustained railgun bombardment. Tethians discovered human submarines in their ocean worlds, hunting their underwater cities, the minor Concordat. Species who had cheered Kepler Station's destruction found human ships in their skies. Everywhere the message was the same: humanity remembers, humanity does not forgive him. Humanity will burn the galaxy to ash before it allows another Kepler Station. The Vrakesh sent one final transmission to Admiral Zhao. Please, Hive Queen, Jothik begged. We have learned our lesson and we will never threaten humanity again. Zhao considered her words then. He ordered his fleet to withdraw from Vrakesh space, not out of mercy, but because the Vrakesh were no longer a threat there. Military was broken. Their industry was ruined. Their Hive Queens understood exactly what would happen if they ever raised a weapon against humanity again. Remember this, Zhao transmitted to Jothik. You started a war with a species that perfected total warfare while your people were learning to build pretty ships. You wanted to put us in our place now. You know your place. Survive and remember. The human fleet jumped to faster than light. Space heading toward the Luminar core worlds, the galaxy blazed with fire. The Concordat finally understood they had not been attacked by a military, they had been attacked by humanity, and humanity had only just begun. Crystal Mine Threshold watched 17 human fleets drop out of faster-than-light space in 17 different Luminar systems simultaneously. Coordination required for such an operation was beyond anything the Concordat had attempted in 1,000 years. The Luminar census had calculated many possible human strategies. This was not among them impossible. Threshold chimed to the other crystal mines gathered in the central chamber. Their command and control systems cannot coordinate across such distances with the precision required, but the displays showed the truth: 17 fleets appearing at exactly the same moment in Luminar space, each fleet targeting a different core world. The Luminar Armada was the second largest military force in the galaxy, but it was concentrated in defensive positions around their three most important worlds now. They faced a distributed assault across 17 targets. Crystal Mine Threshold made the calculations to defend all 17 systems. They would have to spread their forces thin. To concentrate their forces, they would have to abandon some systems. There was no optimal solution: deploy all available forces to protect the core triad. Threshold commanded the other systems must fend for themselves until reinforcements arrive. It was the logical choice. It was also exactly what Admiral Zhao had predicted. The human fleet attacking the Luminar homeworld consisted of 800 warships. They faced 3,000 Luminar crystal vessels. The Luminar ships were beautiful structures of living crystal that refracted light into rainbow patterns. Their shields could deflect energy weapons with 98% efficiency. Their beam weapons could slice through conventional armor like a cutting torch through ice. They had never lost a defensive battle. The human fleet opened fire, but instead of energy weapons, they used railguns. Tungsten rods accelerated to 30% of light speed. The Luminar shields flickered and failed as solid matter moving at relativistic velocities punched through them. Crystal ships shattered like dropped glass. The physics were simple in orgy. Shields worked by dispersing and redirecting energy. They were not designed to stop solid objects. Carrying kinetic energy measured in megatons. Crystal Mine Threshold watched in horror as a third of the Luminar fleet vanished in the first salvo. Adjust shield frequencies to create kinetic barriers. Threshold commanded the remaining Luminar ships began adapting their shields. The human fleet responded by launching missiles, then fighters, then more railgun rounds from different vectors. The Luminar tried to track all the threats simultaneously, but human warfare was designed to overwhelm defenses. Through sheer volume, Admiral Zhao commanded from the flagship Ain't Vengeance and watched his tactical display. They are adapting their shields, reported his weapons officer. Railgun effectiveness dropping to 60%, switched to nuclear-pumped lasers. Zhao ordered burn through their shields while they are configured for kinetic defense. The Luminar shields blocked the railgun rounds more effectively then. They started failing again as laser fire exploited their reconfiguration. They are changing Shield frequencies again, sir, Good Shao said. Keep them adapting and they cannot effectively launch the second wave fighters. The battle became a chaotic swirl of ships, weapons, and explosions. The Luminar fought with precision and coordinated tactics. The humans fought with controlled chaos. Every time the Luminar adapted to one threat, the humans switched to another crystal. Ships died by the hundreds, but the Luminar consensus did not understand the real threat, while the main human fleet engaged the Luminar armada smaller. Stealth ships slipped past the battle. They carried specialized weapons, seismic charges. The charges landed on the Luminar homeworld, targeting the massive crystal matrices where the Luminar stored their collective consciousness. The Concordat had banned seismic weapons under their warfare conventions. Humanity had not signed those conventions. Charges detonated crystal structures kilometers high, shattered from sympathetic vibrations. Luminor cities cracked apart as resonance frequencies tore through their crystalline architecture at crystal mine threshold. Felt the deaths of millions of individual Luminar nodes. The consensus began to fragment as processing power dropped below minimum coherence thresholds. Cease fire threshold broadcast. In desperation, we surrender, Admiral. Shao received the message. He did not respond. Instead, he ordered his fleet to continue firing. Sir, they are surrendering. His communications officer said. Shao turned to face the young officer. Did the Concordat accept Kepler Station's surrender? He asked quietly. The officer went pale. No, sir. Then we will accept Luminor surrender when I decide they have suffered enough. The battle continued for another 6 hours. By the time Zhao ordered a ceasefire, 2/3 of the Luminar fleet was debris in their homeworlds. Crystal cities were shattered ruins. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the other 16 human task forces were teaching similar lessons to other Concordat species. The Tethians discovered that their ocean worlds were not safe havens. Human submarines moved through their seas like predators. These were not space submarines, they were actual watercraft deployed from orbit Earth, had centuries of experience with submarine warfare. Tethians had never fought an enemy in their natural environment. Human subs hunted Tethian underwater cities with torpedoes and mines. They struck from below where the Tethian space-based sensors could not track them. Entire city-states vanished. In explosions of superheated water, Admiral Kragan coordinated the defense from his command pool. How are they finding our cities? He gurgled in confusion. We have perfect camouflage in our oceans. His sensor officer clicked his mandibles nervously. They are using sonar, sir, and they are listening for our communications. They hunt us the way we hunt the native ocean life. Kragan felt cold water flow through his gills. The Tethians had never been the prey before the smaller Concordat species fared. Even worse, the bird-like Ether found human fighters in their skies, fighters that could outmaneuver anything the Ether had built. Fungoid Mycans discovered that human chemical weapons could sterilize their spore colonies. The insectoid clickers learned that human electronic warfare could disrupt their pheromone-based communications. Every species received a lesson tailored to their specific vulnerabilities, and everywhere the lesson was the same. Humanity had studied the Concordat for 20 years. They knew every weakness, every tactical preference, every cultural blind spot. Concordat had studied humanity too, but they had dismissed humans as primitive newcomers. That dismissal was costing them their empire 6 months after Kepler Station burned. The Concordat held an emergency session. Representatives from all 17 species gathered via holographic link. Many of them transmitted from bunkers or emergency shelters. We must unite our remaining forces, declared the Ether High Fleer. The humans cannot stand against the full might of the Concordat. The humans are fighting on 40 fronts simultaneously, countered a Tethian admiral. They have proven they can fight everywhere at once. We need to negotiate, suggested a Luminar crystal mind. We need to offer them whatever they want to stop this war. The humans have refused every offer of negotiation, said a Rakesh Hive Queen. They want revenge, not resources. The arguing continued for hours. Finally, a representative from one of the minor species asked the question no one wanted to answer. How did we lose this war? We outnumbered them 10-1. We had superior technology. We had 3,000 years of military experience. It's an old Rakesh war leader who had survived the assault. On the Hive worlds answered, we had 3,000 years of limited warfare. She said we fought wars with rules and honor codes and proportional responses. Humans had 10,000 years of total war. They learned to fight without rules when survival was at stake. We fought to win territory or resources or political advantage. They fight to eliminate threats permanently. We never understood what we were facing until it was too late. We thought we were fighting another Concordat species instead. We fought humanity, and humanity does not stop until the enemy cannot threaten them ever again. The session ended with no resolution. The war continued. Human fleets appeared in system after system. Did not occupy territory. They destroyed military assets and left, making each species weaker, making each species remember making. Each species understand that the Concordat's 3,000 years of peace had died at Kepler. Station Admiral Shao stood on the bridge of vengeance and reviewed casualty. Reports human losses were lower than projected. Concordat losses were higher than anyone had imagined. Sir, we have reports of minor Concordat species declaring neutrality. His intelligence officer reported some are offering to join humanity in the war. Zhao shook his head, refused their offers, and tell them to stay neutral if they want to survive. We do not want allies who change sides based on who is winning. What we want is for every species in this galaxy to remember.
What happens when
You betray Earth? He looked at the tactical display, showing human fleets moving across. Concordat space like a spreading fire, the galaxy blazed, and humanity had only one goal left: make the Concordat leadership understand this war would end when humanity decided it ended, not before. 18 months after Kepler Station died, the Concordat leadership gathered on Axis Primed. Neutral world had served as a meeting place for galactic diplomacy for 2,000 years. Its orbital stations had witnessed peace treaties and trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Today, it would witness something different. Arinder's great chamber held representatives from all 17 Concordat species, but they looked nothing like the proud coalition that had existed before humanity arrived at Bleen. Jothik attended via hologram because leaving Rakesh space would expose her to assassination from her own people who blamed her for the war. Only 3 of the original 12 Hive Queens' Servaved crystal mine threshold flickered with unstable light patterns because the Luminar consensus no longer had enough intact nodes to maintain full coherence. Luminar civilization that had existed for 15,000 years now struggled to think clearly. Admiral Kragan swam in a portable water tank because the Tethians no longer controlled enough ocean worlds to feel safe. Their underwater cities lay in ruins there. People scattered to refugee camps on land. The minor Concordat species sent representatives, but many of them were military officers rather than diplomats because the diplomats had died when human fleets struck their capital worlds. The chamber filled with the sound of different species breathing, clicking, and humming in their native environments. Then the human shuttle appeared on the docking scanners. One Shuttaloon, armed, carrying one passenger. Admiral Marcus Shao walked into the chamber wearing a simple military uniform. No guard snow weapon snow fleet in orbit to protect him. The Concordat representatives stared. You come alone? Hive Queen Jothik buzzed in surprise. Why would you risk yourself in a room full of your enemies? Shao looked at her hologram with eyes that had seen too much death. Because you are not my enemies anymore, he said quietly. You are defeated powers who finally understand what you unleashed, and because if you kill me here, my species will burn every one of your worlds to bedrock and salt the ashes. The chamber fell silent. No one doubted his words. You wanted this meeting, Shao continued, so let us be clear about why we are here. You are not here to negotiate terms. You are here to accept the reality that the Concordat, as it existed, is dead. You killed it when you fired on Kepler Station. Crystal mine threshold chimed softly. We made a mistake, the Luminar said. We underestimated humanity, and we acted with arrogance. Many of our people have paid for that mistake with their lives. What more do you want from us? Shao walked to the center of the chamber. I want you to understand something, he said. For 3,000 years you maintained peace, not through enlightenment, but through comfort. You made war civilized with rules and honor codes and proportional responses. You fought limited conflicts for limited goals. You believed that made you advanced. It did not make you advanced. It made you soft. Tethian Admiral gurgled in anger. We had laws that governed warfare to prevent senseless slaughter. We had ethics that separated us from barbarians you humans ignored. All of that you fought without honor, Xiao nodded slowly. We fought to win, he said. We fought to ensure that no one would ever threaten. Earth again, we fought the way species fight when their survival is at stake. You called us barbarians because we did not follow your rules. But your rules only existed because you never faced an enemy who threatened your existence. The moment you felt truly threatened, you betrayed every principle you claimed to hold. You murdered 2 million civilians. In a surprise attack, you divided our colonies among yourselves like spoils. You thought we would bow our heads and accept our place? Zhao's voice grew harder, so do not lecture me about honor and ethics. We learned those lessons from you. We just learned them better, Hive Queen. Zhathic's hologram flickered. What do you want from us, she asked. What are your terms for ending this war? Zhao pulled a data crystal from his pocket and placed it on the central table. Read them carefully, he said, though. Concordat representatives accessed the data. The terms appeared on their various display systems. Reparations paid over 50 years territory, ceded to human-controlled dismantling of offensive fleet capabilities. War. Crimes tribunals for leaders who ordered the attack on Kepler Station, but the clause that made them all freeze was the final one. Any future act of genocide, betrayal, or preemptive warfare by Concordat members against any species will be met with immediate and total human military response. No warnings, no negotiations, no mercy. We are now the galaxy's enforcers. Us and learn what Kepler Station already taught you. You would make yourselves tyrants over the galaxy. An Ether diplomat squawked you would hold every species hostage to human military might. Zhao shook his head. We will make ourselves the immune system against betrayal, he corrected. For 3,000 years, the Concordat maintained peace through consensus. That system failed the moment you felt threatened by a newcomer species, so now humanity will maintain peace through deterrence. You will never again attack a weaker species, because you will know that we are watching. You will never again commit genocide, because you will know the price. You will never again start a war of aggression, because you will remember what happened when you started one against us. Crystal Mind Threshold processed the terms. This is not peace. The Luminar said this is occupation without physical presence. This is domination. Through fear, no, Xiao replied. This is the price of teaching humanity what you are capable of. You showed us that the Concordat cannot be trusted to police itself. You showed us that given the opportunity, you will prey on those weaker than you so. Now you will live, knowing that humanity will never allow that to happen again. We are not asking for your agreement. We are informing you of reality. Admiral Kragan swam in his tank, and if we refuse these terms, he gurgled. Zhao's expression did not change then. This war continues until there is no Concordat left, he said, simply until your species exists only in history files. Until the galaxy forgets you ever existed. My fleet is ready to resume operations. We have more weapons. We have not yet used. We have strategies we have not yet deployed. We can keep fighting for decades if necessary, can you? The chamber filled with the sounds of alien disperk, clicks and chimes and gurgles. That all expressed the same thing, Diffid Queen. Zhathic spoke first of Rakesh. Accept your terms. She said, we have learned our lesson one by one. The other species agreed. Crystal Mind. Threshold Admiral Kragenthe, representatives of the minor species, all of them, signed the treaty with whatever appendages their biology provided. When it was done, Zhao stood before them. Remember this moment, he said. Remember that you brought this upon yourselves. Remember that Earth did not seek war. We sought only to exist in peace and develop our civilization. Decided we needed to learn our place. Instead, you learned why humanity survived 10,000 years of killing each other. You learned why our history is written in blood. You learned why you never threatened a species that mastered total war before. We reached the stars. He turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. Said in our databases, we maintain a memorial to Kepler Station. Every name, every face. Every story of the 2 million people who died there, my species will remember them. For 1,000 years, I suggest you remember them too. Because if you ever forget what happens when you betray Earth, those 2 million voices will cry out for justice again, and next time we will not stop until silence is all that remains of this The species who wronged us, Admiral Zhao, left the chamber. The Concordat representatives sat in stunned silence. They had come expecting negotiations. They received a sentence outside the station windows. The galaxy continued its slow rotation. Stars burned as they had for billions of years, but something had changed. The age of the Concordat was over. The age of human oversight had begun. Years would pass. Historians would debate whether humanity's response had been proportional, whether the destruction had been necessary, whether the peace that followed was worth the price. But in the refugee camps scattered across Concordat space, no one debated. In the memorial gardens where holographic names of Kepler station victims glowed eternal, no one questioned. In the military academies where new officers learned the lessons of human warfare, no one doubted they had learned three truths. Never mistake human kindness for weakness, never strike first, and expect mercy. Never betray Earth, because when humanity goes to war, the galaxy does not just change, it blazes, and in the ashes, the strong learn to fear the clever, the aggressive learn to fear the determined, the proud learn to fear the survivors. The Concordat had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Humanity had ended that rule in 18 months, not through superior technology, not through greater numbers, but through the simple and terrible lesson that some species will burn the galaxy to ash before they allow their people to be murdered without consequence. War was over. The peace had begun, and every species in the galaxy would remember for a very long time.